Discover the inspiring journey of a hidden hero, from waiter to TV star in just 30 days. Jake Collins wiped down the counter at Rosie's Diner, the clink of cutlery and echoes of laughter buzzing around him like static. He felt trapped within the grease-stained confines of his apron, but a fire flickered inside. Beyond this quaint diner, his heart yearned for a life draped in stage lights, reciting lines that echoed his hidden truths. Raised by a resilient single mother, he had learned to work hard, but now it felt like he was just treading water, with every dish wiped further sinking his dreams. His fingers trembled with the weight of ambition and the fear of failure. What if acting was a foolish fantasy, just a ghost of a dream that could dissipate like steam from the coffee pot? He rehearsed monologues in the dim corners of the diner, but as the sun dipped each night, doubt settled in. What if he didn't possess the talent to stand in front of a crowd? What if his dreams were meant to stay hidden like the secrets of his hometown? As Jake poured coffee for Mr. Thompson, an older man who frequented the diner, he noticed the shrewd gaze that lingered a moment longer than usual. Thompson, a former local TV actor, had seen sparks of drama in Jake's coffee runs and idle chatter. "You've got something in you, kid," he said one afternoon, his voice a gravelly whisper that stirred hope and fear in Jake. Jake's defenses shot up. Did he truly have potential, or was he just imagining things? Before he could spiral further into self-doubt, Thompson began mentoring him, guiding him through the rhythms of acting between sips of black coffee, each session a delicate dance challenging Jake's gripped aspirations. Laughter punctuated their meetings, softening the harsh edges of reality, but Jake's uncertainty hung like a cloud. The pressure of needing to prove himself gnawed at him. He feared failure. The very thought of being dismissed as just another wannabe bruised his pride. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The talent show creeping closer felt like a ticking clock, a countdown against his mounting insecurities. He finally landed a spot, but it came with a lurking shadow. Brad, his childhood rival, with charm wrapping around deception like a cloak, had also entered. Suddenly, Jake's spirit was torn, conflicting emotions swirling within him. Did he want the applause that had always eluded him, even if it meant rising against someone who had taunted him? It was the perfect storm of pressure, old grudges mixing with the desire to pursue his dreams. As rehearsals and competition intensified, Jake began discovering unsettling truths about Brad's past, whispers of shadows that stained their community. The hint of leveraging this information twisted like a knife in Jake's gut. Should he expose Brad and snatch the spotlight, or uphold the values his mother taught him, battling an excruciating moral divide? His heart raced, each setback provoking an internal doubt. Just when it seemed a breakthrough was on the horizon, a letter arrived, revealing unexpected sacrifices his mother had made for him. That truth crystallized his ambition. Was it worth the cost? Jake's breath quickened as he stared into the mirror, wrestling with loyalty and ambition. The light from his dreams growing ever nearer, yet feeling undeniably out of reach. The curtain was ready to rise, but Jake stood in the depths, unsure of the world waiting on the other side. Jake stood in front of the mirror, the glow of his dreams illuminating his conflicted reflection. Every remark from Mr. Thompson played in his head like a relentless drumbeat, urging him to seize the moment. But behind the bravado lay a tangled mess of insecurities and unresolved loyalties. Could he really chase his dreams, knowing full well the potential fallout it could bring for both him and Brad? The air felt thick with anticipation, every breath a reminder of the escalating pressure. He needed clarity, a moment of silence amidst the turbulent storm. As he stepped out of the diner's commotion, Jake found himself in the alley, the decor of flickering neon lights juxtaposing the darkness of his thoughts. He realized he had to confront his internal fears. Was he an actor at heart, or merely a waiter pretending? The unsettling idea of betraying Brad had consumed him. Digging deeper into those whispers circulating about Brad's past felt like wandering down a rabbit hole that could lead either to enlightenment or destruction. Jake had always prided himself on his values, nurtured by the sacrifices of his mother. But now, tangled in ambition, he questioned which path truly aligned with who he was becoming. That evening when he returned home, he pored over the letter again. Each handwritten word felt heavier than lead, a reminder of his mother's struggles and hopes pinned on him. She had fought to give him every opportunity, and for her, he wanted success more than anything. The mixture of pride and obligation wrestled inside him. How could he chase the spotlight when it came with the risk of dimming another's? Days turned into rehearsals, and each practice revealed more about himself than the role he was trying to embody. Jake started to recognize the nuances in his performance, how passion fueled authenticity. An invigorating realization emerged. His struggle, his truth, could be his greatest asset. As he dove deeper, the character he rehearsed became intertwined with his journey. He felt his weaknesses transforming into strength, renewing his conviction that vulnerability could lead to authentic connections with the audience. Thompson noticed the change in Jake's demeanor, his movements becoming more confident, less calculated. "You have to let go of the fear," he urged during a particularly intense session. "The connections you build on that stage matter more than the applause. Let your performance come from the truth of your spirit." The weight of those words resonated, igniting a newfound determination in Jake to embrace both his talents and anxieties. But Brad's shadow crept closer, and as the night of the talent show approached, Jake's uncertainty returned with a vengeance. Every night he stood before the mirror rehearsing his lines, he found himself picturing the audience's faces, their expectations weighing down on him like an unwanted cloak. The friendly banter he once shared with Brad now felt like a faint memory, fading under the gravity of their rivalry. Then, just as Jake began to settle into his resolve, he ran into Brad at the diner, the air thick with unspoken tension. Their eyes locked, and for a fleeting moment, Jake caught a glimmer of something familiar, a shared dream of recognition that had once united them. It struck him. Perhaps they were not as different as he had considered. The time had come for Jake to face not only the stage, but also the possibility of confrontation with Brad. Would he bond over their similar aspirations, or would the rivalry engulf him in a whirlpool of insecurity? Tomorrow was the big night. Decisions loomed on the horizon, urging him to decipher the man he wanted to become. In that moment of truth, would he align with the values instilled in him, or let ambition take the wheel? A deep breath caught in his throat as he stepped toward the door, not knowing that this night could change everything. The stage loomed large in Jake's mind as he walked away from the diner, his heart heavy with the burden of unresolved tension. Each step echoed the distant thudding of applause he hoped to earn, yet the uncertainty gnawed at him like an unseen predator. He knew he had to confront his feelings, to strip down the walls he'd built and unearth the truth hidden beneath the layers of ambition and moral conflict. In the sanctity of his small apartment that evening, Jake faced his reflection again, not in the mirror, but in the sterile light of his phone screen as he replayed rehearsal recordings. Each line echoed in the depths of his insecurity, yet as he listened, he felt an undercurrent of potential surging to the surface. He began to understand that every stumble in rehearsal wasn't a failure, but a revelation of the depths he could reach. It was terrifying and exhilarating. The thought of Brad weighed heavily on him. They had shared whispers about their dreams now at odds. Was he ready to appear on stage where the bright lights would reveal not just his talent, but also the sacrifices and decisions binding him to another? Perhaps, in seeking his own dreams, Jake feared he might extinguish someone's flame, Brad's flame. Intrinsically, though, he knew that success didn't always equate to betrayal. What if, just what if, his rise could propel others alongside him? With each narration, the prospect of connection, however fraught, shimmered enticingly. He imagined sharing a stage with Brad, side by side, rather than opponents. Could they not turn their rivalry into a partnership? The idea sent a ripple of hope through him. Morning arrived with an electric charge, the world buzzing with the energy of the impending performance. Jake felt compelled to reach out to Brad to unravel the fabric of their enmity. The prospect both terrified and excited him. He weighed the risks, the chance of rejection, the potential for discovery. Heart in throat, he tapped out a quick text to Brad, a simple invitation. "Can we talk before the show tonight?" As hours passed, a torrent of emotions surged through Jake: fear, anticipation, hope. Was it a mistake to reach out so close to the performance? The voice of self-doubt insinuated itself once more, but he silenced it with the memory of Thompson's words. Let your performance come from the truth of your spirit. Maybe the truth was that he didn't want to eliminate Brad. He wanted to elevate them both. At the diner during their brief lunch break, Jake's eyes darted over to the booth where Brad sat, ethereal in his own thoughts. Jake's heart thrummed. This was it. With every beat, he felt more resolute. Tonight could break them or strengthen their bond. With shaky hands, he stood up, the bustling diner fading into a blur as he made his way to Brad. "Hey, can we step outside?" Jake's voice trembled, barely above a murmur, but his resolve radiated through. Brad looked up, startled, but after a moment's pause, nodded. The tension hung thick in the air as they crossed the threshold into the alley where Jake had found clarity days before. The neon lights hummed faintly around them, and Jake felt the weight of the moment deepen. "I think we need to talk about the show tonight," Jake started, planting the seed for a conversation he desperately hoped would lead to understanding rather than division. But before he could articulate his intentions, the rush of doubts clawed at him. What if Brad had no interest in collaboration? What if his ambition was too embedded in rivalry to see the potential for teamwork? As the silence between them grew heavier, Jake realized he was at a crossroads, each possible direction fraught with consequences. "Are we going to keep doing this?" Brad finally asked, his voice low. "Competing instead of working together?" Jake's heart raced. This could either be the moment that defined their paths or another missed opportunity. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything he wanted to say resting on the edge of his... The words were there, waiting. Would he find the courage to deliver them? The tension pulsed around them as they stood inches apart, each waiting for the other to bridge the chasm that had formed between their dreams. The alleyway was suffocating, filled with the heady scent of grease and uncertainty, and Jake felt trapped between ambition and fear. Brad's question, hanging between them like a fragile thread, urged him to seize the moment. His resolve began to harden. This was not merely about the performance tonight. It was about the future, about their intertwined destinies, forged in the fires of competition and raw ambition. Jake hesitated, grappling with the conviction he felt rising within him. I don't want us to be enemies anymore, Brad. I've been thinking, what if we collaborated instead? The silence that followed felt like a lifetime. Jake's mind raced, the urgency of the moment pushing him to confront the competing narratives he had spun around their relationship. He could see the flicker of surprise in Brad's eyes, but a wall of skepticism quickly followed. "Collaborate?" Brad repeated, his brow furrowed. "What makes you think that would work? We've spent so long fighting against each other." Jake's pulse quickened. He could feel the warmth of possibility battling the cold weight of doubt. He took a step closer, leaning into vulnerability. "I know," he replied, forcing honesty into his voice. "But what if our strengths combined could create something greater than our individual performances? Both of us winning rather than one of us losing." As the dim light cast shadows across Brad's face, Jake recognized the tremors of contemplation ripple through him. He dared to hope. This was the raw truth. He wanted success, yes, but he didn't want to trample anyone in pursuing it. What if, just for once, success could mean lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down? The thought invigorated him, igniting a flicker of resolve. Brad shifted his weight, struggling to grapple with the notion. "And how do we even begin? We have this performance to prepare for." "Let me show you," Jake insisted, his excitement bubbling over. "Let's take our strongest points, weave them together, and present them as a unified front. We can challenge each other without tearing each other down." For the first time, Jake saw a glimmer of curiosity flicker across Brad's features. The competitive edge that had defined their interactions could transform into a partnership, a push toward excellence for both of them. The idea was terrifying, yet invigorating. Could they truly shift this narrative? Okay, but if we're going to do this, we need to put our egos aside, Brad said, his voice steadier now. We have to commit fully, no holding back. Jake nodded, a rush of adrenaline flooding him. This was a turning point, the moment where he chose collaboration over rivalry. The road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, but he wouldn't be facing them alone anymore. First time that his ambitions didn't have to come at the expense of another's. "Let's make this count then," Jake replied, resolution coursing through him. But a shadow of doubt lingered. Was he capable of this kind of partnership? The idea of sharing the stage, not in competition but in harmony, sent a tremor of excitement through him, yet anxiety remained a close companion. They needed to act quickly. The performance was only hours away. As they began to outline their strengths, the energy around them shifted, the initial tension giving way to a burgeoning sense of possibility. However, Jake couldn't shake the thought that their collaboration might attract not just applause but scrutiny, a blend of support and criticism that awaited them. With their plan loosely sketched, dawn began to break over the horizon of their new dynamic. But as they prepared to enter the stage, Jake felt a lurking presence at the back of his mind, an unsettling thought that perhaps their decision would cause friction among their peers, turning the applause they desired into whispers of dissent. The moment of truth approached, and the stakes were higher than ever. Could they triumph together, or would the insecurities born of their past clashes threaten to repeat themselves amid the blinding lights? Jake's heart raced as the spotlight hit the stage like a fierce blaze, illuminating not just the performers, but the truths he had been hiding from himself. Collaborating with Brad was more than just a strategic choice. It was a leap into the unknown, a dance on the precipice of vulnerability. As he looked at Brad, the tension between them had started to transform into something profound, an electric connection fueled by their desire to elevate one another instead of competing fiercely. With their collaboration taking shape, Jake committed himself to the moment. He stepped forward, soaking in the audience's anticipatory energy, feeling for the first time in a long time that he belonged here, that he deserved this space. He no longer wanted to just survive this performance, he wanted to thrive in it. His mind began to race with ideas, recalling the rich tapestry of his past experiences, each one carefully woven into the fabric of who he was becoming. "We need to bring the best of us together," he said, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his chest. "Let's highlight each other's strengths. When I go up, you'll support. When you shine, I'll lift you higher." Brad nodded, an encouraging smile breaking through. "Right, let's create something neither of us could have achieved alone." And so it began, a back-and-forth exchange of ideas and performance elements. The way they had previously zeroed in on competition now evolved into an artistry neither had anticipated. Each rehearsal was a discovery of hidden skills, and in sharing the stage, Jake uncovered layers of himself he had long kept buried. As they practiced, Jake's mind churned. He found himself drawing on his past jobs, every waitressing gig, every mundane interaction suddenly transformed into invaluable insights. He recognized how to adapt to different personas, juggling expectations as deftly as he balanced plates. Each memory flooded back with purpose, serving not as chains of regret, but as springboards for confidence. Perhaps this was his moment of revelation. The ability to blend those lessons into their performance meant he was not just a competitor, but a compelling storyteller. But with this new wave of excitement came whispers of doubt. What if they failed? What if their collaboration was scrutinized, their intentions questioned? The fear loomed like a dark cloud. He had put himself in a position that required trust, not just in Brad, but also in the audience, who deserved something authentic from them. As night drew close, Jake found himself standing at the edge of a life-altering discovery, the unresolved tension still gnawing at him. He needed to confront his fears head-on. What had he learned about himself throughout this process? Maybe the secret wasn't merely about winning. Maybe it was about embracing every facet of his character. The moment before their performance approached. They stood backstage, hearts pounding, breaths synchronized. Jake glanced at Brad, silently asking a question that echoed in his mind. Were they ready? The camaraderie they had forged was palpable, but could it withstand the judgment of their peers who had never seen them as allies? As the curtain drew up, adrenaline surged in Jake's veins, a mix of excitement and anxiety twisting together. Handing their pride over to the stage felt risky, yet exhilarating. The lights blazed brighter than ever, each beam striking the pretense surrounding their relationship. But what Jake didn't know about himself was the transformative power of vulnerability laid bare on that stage. Could he truly embrace the unknown, or would he crumble beneath the weight of expectation? As they stepped forward to take their places, he felt a surge of determination. The air thickened with anticipation, adrenaline coursing as the opening notes ignited the experience. But as the first sounds filled the air, a sudden tension gripped him. From the shadows on the sidelines, an unfamiliar figure watched silently, an old rival whose presence sent ripples of uncertainty through Jake. The performance had started, but a fresh wave of internal conflict brewed. Would this be a chance for triumph, or a duel he had not prepared for? The music enveloped Jake like a thick fog, blending seamlessly with the rush of adrenaline. The initial notes reverberated through him, igniting a spark of hope against the looming shadows of doubt. As his body instinctively moved, he felt the audience's energy lift him, every cheer a wave that swept him away from the stifling confines of his insecurities. But then he caught sight of the familiar figure lingering at the edge of the stage. It was Kyle, his old adversary, a reminder of every failure Jake had fought to forget. The last time he had seen Kyle, the loss had stung deeply. They had left the same room as competitors, but Kyle had emerged with the accolades that Jake had so desperately sought. Now, here he was, spectating with an unsettling smile, as if waiting to collect a debt of humiliation. Distracting himself, Jake focused on the rhythm of their performance. Brad emerged, confident and vibrant, launching into their carefully orchestrated piece. The way they flowed together felt almost instinctual, like the rush of old chemistry rekindled. With each moment, Jake discovered something new. His confidence expanded, allowing joy to seep into the cracks of his previously guarded heart. Yet, beneath the vibrant surface, a tumult brewed. Kyle's presence gnawed at him, threading a darker undercurrent into the otherwise electrifying atmosphere. Learning to trust Brad had disarmed some of Jake's defenses, but the uncertainty brought forth by his rival stripped him naked before the stage and the audience. He was trapped between two realities, one filled with the potential for greatness with Brad, and another weighed down by the past exemplified by Kyle. Jake's mind raced, running through the what-ifs. If he stumbled, if Brad faltered, the whispers of a near failure echoed around him, urging him to retreat into the shadows of self-doubt. Then, he had to confront the most pressing question. Why did Kyle's judgment weigh so heavily on him? What if this performance was a chance not for others' validation, but a reclamation of his own narrative, breaking the chains of his past? As the performance continued, a sense of clarity emerged. The duality of his experiences, both the pitfalls and triumphs, was what made his story unique. Every moment served as a thread in the fabric of who he was, and he was ready to embrace all of it. Perhaps it was time to shift the focus from fear to resilience, transforming every glance cast his way into an opportunity to rise above expectations. With that realization, Jake directed his energy toward Brad, catching his eye. They exchanged a brief, knowing look, a silent agreement that they were in this together. Together, they would paint a narrative that was not only compelling, but also authentic. A story of two men who had bid farewell to petty rivalries and embraced the powerful bond of collaboration. The final crescendo approached, building momentum toward a climax that would surely captivate their audience. As they reached the top of the wave, Jake threw himself into the experience, proving to himself that the internal battle he faced was as critical as the performance itself. He was not just clinging to a fleeting moment, he was redefining his entire existence. But with each note that reverberated through the auditorium, Kyle's presence felt stronger, more foreboding. The performance pressed on, yet Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was waiting just outside the spotlight. What if Kyle took it upon himself to challenge Jake once the applause had faded? What if his past would not only whisper, but shout to be reconquered? In that fraught moment, Jake realized that he stood at the brink of a pivotal transformation. Could he own this new beginning? Could he turn the page on his life and steadfastly declare that he was not just a performer, but a powerful force ready to confront his past? The final chord struck, and their performance ended with a flourish. But as the applause erupted, Jake's heart raced, not just with the thrill of the moment, but with the impending confrontation that awaited him. The night was far from over. As the deafening applause echoed through the auditorium, Jake stood in a daze, feeling the rush of adrenaline still coursing through his veins, battling against the shadows that loomed in his mind. Each cheer felt like both affirmation and challenge, reminding him that this night was about more than just performance. It was about confronting his own demons. Jake quickly turned away from the audience, his heart pounding as he caught another glimpse of Kyle. The smirk on his rival's face was unnervingly unyielding. If there were any echoes of the past, they played ominously in the background, each note serving as a reminder of the pressure he had endured. A mere performance didn't seem enough to erase years of inadequacy. It felt more like just the beginning of a deeper confrontation. Finding a moment of reprieve, Jake slipped backstage. He leaned against the cool concrete wall, focusing on his breath. The exhilaration of the stage had been intoxicating, yet it was quickly replaced with a weighty realization. Kyle's presence was not just a memory of past failures. It symbolized his fear of failure itself. He had spent too long letting that fear dictate his decisions, and now it threatened to unravel the progress he had just embraced. "Jake?" Brad's voice cut through the chaos, and Jake turned to see his partner approaching, eyes bright with excitement. "You were incredible out there." "Thanks, man, but it wasn't just about the performance," Jake admitted, running a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his features. "What if he comes after me? What if I falter when it really matters?" Brad studied him intently, the lightness fading from his eyes as he sensed the shift in Jake's energy. "You can't live in the shadows of what-ifs. We've come too far together. This was a step forward, not backward. We can't allow Kyle or anyone else to dictate our story." Jake nodded, struggling to align his newfound determination with the grip of doubt still strangling him. "You're right, but it's difficult to remember that in moments like this." As they spoke, a flicker of inspiration hit him, igniting a flame of resolve he hadn't felt in years. Perhaps this was the opportunity he had been seeking, not just a chance to prove himself to others, but an invitation to redefine who he was. He straightened up, fueled by the belief that overcoming the cycle of comparison was crucial to his development. It was time to shift the landscape of his narrative, to drive the story instead of being a pawn in it. "Let's make a plan," Jake said, his expression fierce. "We'll practice harder, refine our routines, and prepare for anything Kyle can throw at us." He could feel the burgeoning ambition reigniting inside him. This was a crucial turning point. Brad smiled, the camaraderie of their partnership infusing the moment with renewed energy. "I like that. Together, we can take whatever he dishes out. Let's tackle this head on." The tension in Jake's shoulders eased ever so slightly, but it wasn't enough to extinguish the lingering fear coursing through him. He needed to be ready for Kyle, not just physically, but mentally. The battle ahead wasn't merely about the next performance. It involved reclaiming the power he had allowed Kyle to wield in his mind for too long. As they made their way back toward the waiting crowd, Jake's heart raced with vulnerability and excitement. The next stage of his journey demanded more than simply proving himself. It required embracing the scars of his past and transforming them into strengths. But as he stepped into the limelight one more time, the thrill of a new challenge emerged. Kyle had always waited for an opportunity to strike. Jake could sense a storm brewing on the horizon, and he knew that the time had come to face that storm with determination. What challenges awaited him in the uncertain shadows of rivalry? Would he crumble under the pressure, or would he rise, renewed and fortified by resolve? With a new sense of purpose, he took a deep breath, prepared to dive back into the fray. The crowd's cheers faded as Jake stepped back onto the auditorium floor, but the echo of their applause clung to him, a mixture of heat and trepidation. It was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside. He could feel the stakes rising. His next move was critical. He lifted his chin, channeling the energy around him, trying to exude confidence while grappling with shadows that gnawed at him. "Let's break this down," he urged Brad, their planning invigorated by adrenaline. They settled onto worn benches backstage, surrounded by the remnants of their performance, shattered expectations and glimmers of hope. "First, we need a strategy," Brad suggested, pulling out his notebook. "Let's get to the core of our routines. What do we need to amplify? Where do we fall short?" Jake nodded, pushing aside lingering doubts about his worthiness. They dissected their routines, evaluating every move and transition. Each criticism stung, yet brought clarity. As they worked, Jake discovered more than just weak spots. He unearthed hidden strengths he hadn't recognized before. For the first time, he voiced ideas that flared with creativity, and with each suggestion, a newfound confidence blossomed. "Your solo really shines when you include those flourishes," Jake pointed out. "We need to highlight that more." Brad smiled, coaxing out Jake's emerging assertiveness. "Exactly. We can play with the lighting during your solo. The contrast will draw people in." As they engaged in passionate discussion, Jake realized he had become an active participant in shaping their destiny. No longer was he merely reacting to Kyle's presence. He was forging ahead, investing in his own capabilities. Days turned into weeks as they immersed themselves in relentless practice. The sweat-soaked sessions pushed Jake's limits, both physically and mentally. There were moments of frustration when he stumbled or felt overwhelmed by the weight of expectation looming over him. But each setback became an opportunity for growth. He was learning to embrace discomfort, turning it into fuel rather than viewing it as undoing. Yet, beneath the surface of determination, a sinister current crept in. Kyle remained a haunting figure. Each reflection in the mirror seemed to summon a challenge from his rival, an unspoken taunt lurking in the shadows of their preparation. When Jake closed his eyes, he could almost hear Kyle's mocking voice, daring him to falter. "Don't focus on him," Brad would insist, a mantra that began to take root. "We have our own story to tell." Jake began to understand the subtleties of Brad's insights. The narrative they crafted was theirs alone. Kyle's fear-mongering couldn't enter the mental fortress they were building. It was a choice he had to make, to relinquish the power Kyle's name held over him. In moments of quiet reflection, Jake caught glimpses of his transformation. He no longer hesitated to make decisions or voice his opinions. His body responded to the disciplines they practiced with a grace that surprised him. With time, the spark ignited into a steady flame, illuminating the path forward. Finally came the day of the next big performance. The fervor heated the air, and as Jake stood backstage, the cacophony of the crowd reached a fever pitch. But this time, he felt different. He was ready, not just to compete against Kyle, but to unveil the greatness brewing within himself. Breath quickened in his chest as he took the stage, the spotlight enveloping him like a protective cloak. This was not about the outcome anymore, it was about authenticity. As he began to move, a singular thought crashed through the rhythm of his mind. What if, for once, he chose to redefine success on his own terms? But as his body flowed through the motions, the specter of Kyle lingered just beyond the spotlight, waiting for an opportunity to undermine his resolve. Would Jake's newfound clarity hold strong, or would the past catch up to him when he least expected it? The pulsating energy in the room served as both challenge and beckoning. Jake was on the brink of a revelation, poised to discover not just how he would perform tonight, but who he truly had become in the process. As Jake moved seamlessly across the stage, the music pulsed like a heartbeat, and for a moment he lost himself in the choreography. Each step was deliberate, every pivot, every leap a testament to the countless hours spent honing his craft. The exhilaration surged within him, matched only by the cacophony of cheers swelling from the audience. But within that euphoria lay an undercurrent of doubt, a flicker of uncertainty fighting to break through. He resolved to focus, to hold firm to the promise that today wasn't solely about competition, it was about self-discovery. His thoughts raced as he executed each move, blending fluidity and precision like never before. Yet memories of Kyle creeping into his consciousness tugged at the edges of his composure. Could he truly shake off the weight of comparison? With each segment of the routine unfolding, Jake began to push against Kyle's shadow. He viewed himself as an artist now, not merely as a performer. The reflective surfaces of the auditorium mirrored laughter and applause, but also the shadows of his unfulfilled ambitions. He embraced the complexities of his journey, knowing he'd been molded not just by successes, but by the struggles he faced. After completing the routine, Jake took a single breath, allowing a moment of stillness. He felt that perhaps the most significant performance of his life wasn't the one undertaken on stage, but the transformation he'd undergone within. The trajectory from self-doubt to a burgeoning sense of possibility flourished in the wake of every practice session. This clarity, this resolve, surged through him like wildfire. Yet, as he stepped off the stage, a dark thought embraced him. Had he really succeeded? The question lingered, gnawing away at his fleeting satisfaction. He scanned the backstage, where whispers of how the performance had gone were already beginning to stir. He could hear critiques forming, fear clawing for acknowledgement. Watching from a distance, Kyle stood with his arms crossed, an unwavering sentinel of judgment. "Do you seriously think you stand a chance now?" Kyle's smirk played on his lips as he approached. There was disappointment masked as amusement. Jake felt exposed, vulnerable, the very genesis of his self-worth crumbling. "I wasn't competing against you," he asserted, grasping for the resolve that he'd fought to cultivate. Yet words felt hollow, reverberating without true belief. "Fighting the past becomes easy when you forget to truly see it," Kyle taunted, flashing victorious confidence. Jake turned. He no longer wanted to engage. Retreating into a quiet corner, he focused on his breathing, inviting silence instead of the echo of defeat. For the first time, potential avenues of future growth began to unfurl in his mind. What if he shifted his attention away from Kyle's influence and instead scrutinized his own aspirations? Could this pivot reveal paths yet unrevealed? His heart pounded, and he realized the answer lay in the tension that sparked between internal acknowledgement and external performance. He thought about Brad's guidance. "Our story is uniquely ours," ringing in his mind. Jake needed to capitalize on this impending moment, catalyzing doubt into a profound catalyst for change. Despite Kyle's taunts, the itch within him directed toward a deeper inquiry. Who was Jake Kessler beyond the panorama of rivalry? But as the self-reflection deepened, so did the uncertainty. What kind of artist? What would he evolve into? The night was still alive, teeming with echoes of possibility. Jake could almost taste the opportunity, breathing heavily, waiting for him to confront it head-on. In that charged atmosphere, he sensed the threads of his next decision unwinding, each one a choice between fear or authenticity. As he prepared to re-enter the fray, a realization hung in the air. The most formidable confrontation wouldn't be with Kyle, but with the version of himself that still feared failure. What would he choose to unleash? A hero ready for the battle, or a shadow resigned to the expectations of another? Jake stepped away from the pulsating chaos of backstage, his heart hammering as he confronted the past. The challenge wasn't merely about performance, but pocketing his truth amid the clamor of noise. Every word Kyle uttered lingered, but this time they carried less weight. In his newfound clarity, Jake recognized the power he had gained from the countless rehearsals, from learning to trust, to collaborate. As he collected himself, the adrenaline faded, paved by determination. Fear was no longer a crutch. It had transformed into a stepping stone, guiding him toward growth. Jake rounded the corner into the spotlight once more, no longer as an individual defined by rivalry, but as a cohesive force ready to own his narrative. The introduction began, the audience humming with anticipation, and Jake breathed life into the moment. Every step was deliberate, each breath broadened by a sense of belonging. This performance was about more than applause. It was the culmination of a journey that spanned his personal trials and professional aspirations. With Brad anchoring him, their choreography unfolded a tapestry of connection, vulnerability, and unity. The warmth of the audience encased him, Applause echoed as they executed their routine, the energy rising like a tide. Each movement showcased the elements they had weaved together, and with each complete motion, confidence surged within Jake like electricity. He no longer felt shackled by insecurity. He was liberated, grasping at the familiarity of trust he built with Brad. As the performance reached its pinnacle, for the first time, Jake noticed not Kyle in the wings, but the faces of those who believed in him. The joy radiating from the audience was not just a reflection of entertainment. It connected with the struggles Jake had endured. The standing ovation echoed through the auditorium, transcending fear and rivalry, marking his profound accomplishment. Backstage, amidst the whirlwind of emotions, the jubilation of success mixed with the burdens of past confrontations, Jake felt something new emerge. This wasn't merely a closing chapter, it was the beginning of an evolution. The thrum of validation washed away the remnants of doubt. There was an unshakable confidence grounding him now. "That was unforgettable," Brad exclaimed, his voice tinged with excitement and relief. "We did it, together!" Jake turned, meeting his partner's gaze with gratitude simmering beneath the surface. "We didn't just perform, Brad. We reinvented our paths. It's more than applause. It's about who we've become." That moment, Jake saw the strides made. The internal transition had manifested externally. He was no longer just fitting into the role of a performer. He embraced the actor within him, confident in the narrative he was shaping. The shadows of rivalry no longer loomed over him. They became mere backdrops to the bright light of his aspirations. As the minutes stretched and the adrenaline waned, Kyle approached, a figure less daunting than before. "Congratulations," he said, a hint of admiration breaking through the hardened exterior. Jake inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of judgment lift. "Thanks. I think there's space for all of us to shine," he replied, his conviction unwavering. It was a transformative acknowledgement, a proclamation that not only had Jake grown, but so had the landscape of his relationships. The applause faded into the background as Jake grasped a deeper truth. Success wasn't a singular achievement. It was a collaborative effort of acknowledgement, of courage to rise above past grievances. In this newfound season, he refused to let fear dictate the contours of his journey. As he stepped away from the illusion of competition, Jake revered his unique story, not defined by others, but by his dedication to personal and professional growth. The opportunity to uplift not only himself, but others transformed the very essence of his journey. In that moment of clarity, he embraced his next steps with solid confidence, a promise to pursue paths that aligned with authenticity rather than rivalry. Jake stood not only as an actor after the lights dimmed, but as a man who had fully embraced who he was meant to be, a hero of his own story. This metamorphosis illuminated his path ahead. He acknowledged that true victory lay not merely in winning applause, but in the connections forged through vulnerability, authenticity, and the willingness to lift others. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support fuels our journey. Comment your thoughts and theories about this transformative ending. What did Jake finally realize about himself and his relationships? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this uplifting message. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Jake stood not only as an actor after the lights dimmed, but as a man who had fully embraced who he was meant to be, a hero of his own story. This metamorphosis illuminated his path ahead. He acknowledged that true victory lay not merely in winning applause, but in the connections forged through vulnerability, authenticity, and the willingness to lift others. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support fuels our journey. Comment your thoughts and theories about this transformative ending. What did Jake finally realize about himself and his relationships? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this uplifting message. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.